I am making this video as a response to Aaron, AA Amazing 3, Woe unto the Wicked, Rex Scientia, aka the Dummite. So actually this is not a debate really, because it's a landslide victory for truth and the facts. And the truth and the facts are that according to the biblical story, Moses did indeed have horns. So it doesn't matter if we call him Moses, Musa, Moshe, whatever you want to say, whatever you want to call this biblical character, you can call him whatever you want. But we're all talking about the same character, Moses. So Aaron from Double A Amazing left a delightful little comment to me that I want to show you. Quote, "Who is Moshe? I thought you said you knew Hebrew. I already made a video a long time ago disproving the myth that Moses had horns. If you say he had horns, it proves you are and your homosexual lover, Benner, don't know Hebrew. Benner is a charlatan and a quack just like you. He is a homosexual." Anyway, he goes on and on talking shit. Here's another one he says. "If you spoke Hebrew, you would never say Moses had horns. That's ridiculous." Exodus 34:35 reads, "And the children of Israel saw the face of Moses, that the skin of Moses' face shone. And Moses put the veil upon his face again until he went in to speak with him." So Aaron is stating that the face of Moses was shining, so it shone. The Hebrew word for shone is the Quran. And when we look up Quran in the Hebrew lexicon of the Strong Concordance, the translation clearly says it means 1. To shine, and B. to display or grow horns, or to be horned. The horns is definitely plural. So 5785 is the word for skin. That the skin of Moses. You see, the skin is not necessarily talking about the actual skin of Moses himself, but the skin that Moses was holding or wearing, like an animal's skin, because that's what the Hebrew word also means. The Hebrew word for skin is or. So the or can also mean the skin or hide of an animal. This animal's skin is known as a pelt. It is the skin that is worn by the human, thus making the character of the anthropomorphic character of the bull or the horned one. And we have countless examples going back to ancient history of our ancestors wearing pelts. So when we take a look at Exodus 34:35, it's clear we're talking about a pelt here. You see, Moses, that has the animal skin or the pelt, his face shone. And thus the shone, like we said, is the representation of the horns. And then it says Moses put. The Hebrew word for put is shuv, which means to turn or return, to turn back or turn over, to turn away. Because we're talking about turning up the veil or the pelt that he is wearing, which is why it talks about the veil. So again, the mention of the veil confirms that we are talking about an animal skin, a pelt, which is why he turns it back so his face could be seen and the horns that were upon his head. So the mesva, or the veil, is the covering, the fabric that covers him like leather, which in that day and age would have been an animal skin. Now you'll notice that when you get married, you wear a veil. You'll notice it looks exactly like a pelt, or the veil, the covering of the animal skin. So Moses was on Mount Sinai, the Mount of Horeb, and if he was on Mount Sinai or any mountain, he was most likely very cold and had to dress warm, as in wearing animal skins or a pelt. So 4,000 years ago, wearing an animal skin or a pelt seems more than logical. Going back to the ancient Druidic order as well as to the ancient cavemen, they all wore the pelts, the furs, the animal skins. And we see the animal skins or the pelts that are worn by ancient cultures like the Eskimo. In fact, these ancient rituals of wearing pelts or animal skin can still be seen to this very day in furs, and you'll notice that they almost always have a hood over the head. And of course, in the Middle East, we also see the garments that cover the head. So the wearing of a pelt is combining the spiritual realm of the animal kingdom with that of man, which is exactly like the zodiac. It is an anthropomorphic representation of animals and humans. Thus, you've seen this many times with the images of Pan, the image of the Baphomet, for example, as well. And of course, we see this anthropomorphism in the character of the devil or the shad. And of course, the devil is always portrayed as either a goat, a ram, or a bull, which are the horned beasts of the zodiac. Oh, and by the way, when we cover ourselves or we are hiding, the word comes from hide, which means to cover. The hide that comes from the animal skin or the pelt, which is an animal hide that we use to cover and hide with. So when we read Exodus 34:35, you'll see the children of Israel saw the face of Moses, and the skin or the animal pelt skin of Moses that was basically veiling his face shone, which means it had animal horns upon it. Thus, he was symbolizing the very essence of their god, the bull god Yah or El. By the way, did you know that the ancient original Torah, the Hebrew Bible, was not written upon papyrus at all? It was actually written upon the animal skins of goats, sheep, and cows. So let's get back to Exodus 34:35 and the word shone, which I already showed you. Thus, the shone is the Qur'an, which means to grow horns, and it also means to send out rays of light. But most people don't grasp this wisdom of what they are saying. Rays of light and horns. It's talking about the light rays and the bullhorns of the sacred moon. The sacred moon god that has been known as Nana, Sin, and of course Yahweh, as well as El. The Hebrew Israelites come from the Sumerian city of in Mesopotamia. They built great temples known as ziggurats. They were dedicated to the moon god, Nana, or Sin. In fact, the very word Chaldean means moon worshippers. So it comes as no surprise that when we take a look at the modern day Hebrew Lord, his name is Yahweh, Yahiwah, or simply Yah. His name begins with the Hebrew Yod, and the Yod is the only Hebrew letter that actually floats and is ascended in the air. And of course, the Hebrew sound for the Yod is Yah. So the Yah in Yahiwah or Yahweh is the moon god, the Semitic Hebrew deity. And so today the Hebrew Semitic word for moon is Yareach, the Yah and the Ray, or the light ray of Ra. The Yah-Ra, or the Yah-Re, which means the Yod, the Resh, and the He, the Y-R-H. The moonlight rays of Yah. So this is why all of the Hebrew holy days or festivals are held upon phases of the moon. In fact, the very word month is named after the moon, the 12 moons that are in one year, which is exactly why the word year comes from Yah. For those of you who are not aware, the lunar bull, which are the horns of the crescent moon, has been worshipped throughout ancient history for thousands of years. So worshipping the lunar moon with the bull has been practiced since ancient times. And the Hebrew Babylonian moon god was known as Nana or Sin. Sin was the god that rode upon the horned bull, and thus his symbol was the symbol of the crescent moon, which is the bull horns. So the Semitic Hebrew lunar bull god Sin was the son of the bull god Enlil. Take notice of the crown of Sin. Notice that his crown comes from the crescent of the moon, the lunar bullhorns. Exactly like the lunar crescent moon of the Roman moon goddess Diana. The lunar Roman moon goddess Diana takes her name from the ancient Anu or An, going back to the ancient Sumerian gods like Inanna, who is Ishtar, and Inanna's father, who is Nana, also known as Sin. And Sin was born from the result of his father Enlil, who raped Ninlil. And the bull god Enlil came from An or Anu. And the bull god An or Anu came from the bull god Anshar, who rode the sacred bull. So now you know why we have the word ancient, the An, which gives us our ancient ancestors, the ancestors of An in Hevan. This is why we have the Anunnaki. And it's not just the ancient Sumerians who worshipped the bull gods. The bull god worship goes back to ancient Greece as well as to ancient Egypt. So the father god of wisdom, Sin or Nana, actually gave birth to the sun god who was known as Utu or Shamash, which is why the modern day Hebrew word for the sun is Shemesh. So perhaps now you'll understand when we look at the Hebrew alphabet and the letter Sin or Shin, you'll know that it stands for the word Shaddai, meaning God. Thus El Shaddai. The moon god Sin is actually the meaning behind the Hebrew letter Shin or Sin. Now remember that the Shin represents the flames or fire. And of course it has the crown as well. So the Sin or the Shin is the Sheen. And a sheen is light that shines. So perhaps now you'll understand why Moses went to Mount Sin, Mount Sinai, the mountain of the moon god. And of course, he came down with the bull horns or the lunar horns. And, of course, he talked to the god Shin, who was on fire.